Got big feelings? They're meant to be felt. I want to talk about this because I recently came out of a program that was very much about like, oh, emotions are just there. You just move on from them. You don't even have to react. And I cringed as a therapist and coach. I was like, no, no, that's not true. So I want to unpack this because it's really important that we use emotions for the purpose that they are there. Emotions are neurobiological signals from our body about our experience and what's coming up for us. And sure, sometimes they can be bigger than the present situation, particularly when something that's going on now is triggering something from our past that we have yet to resolve. And they are important indicators of what we need. When people say things like, oh, yeah, I just don't let it bother me, or oh, just let it go, to me, they are suppressing emotions. And what we know about suppressing emotions is that one of two things happens. And sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades, but eventually it happens. Those emotions either explode out at other people. Maybe you're more irritable or punchy or curt, or maybe even just angry and yelling, or they implode and you end up with depression, other illnesses, maybe even chronic illness, because those emotions are not finding their way out. Now, I'm not talking about wallowing in our emotions, but I am talking about giving ourselves space for what is coming up and what needs to be attended to. The way I look at this is through the lens of parts. So we all have parts of us and we're born that way. I'm not talking about multiple personality, though certainly people with that, with dissociative identity disorder is what we call it now, have parts too, but their parts are much more distinct. We call them alters. They're much more distinct. They definitely have different eyesight, different, they look different, they sound different, all those things. That's not what I'm talking about, though that's a more extreme version of what I'm talking about. We all have parts. So just like there may be a part of you right now who's like, I don't know, that sounds kind of crazy. There might be a part of you that's like, oh yeah, that checks out. And maybe there's a part of you that's like, I totally love the part stuff. Go there, Jen. Hurry up already. And so we all have these parts. And it's important that we hear them because they are, in my mind, they are the ones sending us the emotions. Sure, we know from research on emotions that there's other things going on. I'm still only partway through the book on how emotions are made, which is fascinating because it debunks all the previous ways we thought emotions were made. So I'm still working my way through that one. I'll share an update on how emotions are made in another video when I have finished that book. But at any rate, we know that when emotions come up, a lot of times there's a part of us trying to get our attention. And if we're like, go away or push it away or don't pay attention, that part of us is like, I don't trust her to make the right decision. And eventually ends up kind of like beneath the surface, making things not happen to protect us. When instead, we lean in and get curious about the emotions coming up. And if you're willing to go with the word parts, we lean in and get curious about what this part is trying to tell us. Like, hey, I can tell there's some anger there. What's going on? I can tell there's some grief and sadness. What's going on? I can tell that you're staying small. What's the concern if you went big? And when we lean in and get curious, then we can understand what's fueling the emotion and actually work with the underlying issue. A lot of times it involves giving yourself some space to feel the feeling, but I'm talking hours, not days or weeks on end. It's only when we fail to honor our feelings, when we don't feel them when they need to be felt, that then they get prolonged. But a lot of times, if we can be with the feeling and work through it without our thoughts fueling it, right? If we spiral into this negative thought pattern, then that will fuel the emotion itself. But most emotions only last 90 seconds on their own, unless you have thoughts fueling it, like downward spiraling or doom scrolling, but in your head, I guess you could like think of it that way. I'm entertained by myself right now, so I'm laughing. So at any rate, when you have a big feeling, that's time to lean in and get curious. Because when you do that, then it takes some of the edge off the emotion because you're paying attention. Think about a little kid who's crying. If people ignore the kid, do they stop crying? I mean, maybe eventually they do. You may have seen some of Edtronic's work around blank face to see the impact of depressed parents on their kids when there's no response from the parent and how the baby eventually gives up. So I'm not talking about that. So sometimes that can happen though. If we ignore emotions long enough, they do go away, but then they usually go underground, like I was saying, and either coming out later at other people or going in kind of against our own system. But generally speaking, if we ignore a kid who's crying, they don't just like, oh, okay, no one's ready for my tears right now. No, they cry harder. They need help. They're trying to get your attention. And that's what's going on inside. When there are big feelings that is coming up, that means there's something for you to attend to. So they're not bad and wrong. And here's the thing with ADHD, we feel our feelings deeply. A lot of us do. They can be really big. I think there's lots of reasons for this. One reason we know is the brain, our brains are a bit more sticky. So they can grab onto things and hold on to things. So we might ruminate, but we also may hold wounds longer from the past so that whatever's upsetting us in the moment also is attached to all this other stuff that maybe we haven't worked through yet. And we can work through the feelings. And if, as we pay attention, we're like, oh, because this connects to that, knowing that can even free us up in the moment. For sure, there can be deeper work about working with these parts and the underlying obstacles that are there and those past wounds that are fueling our present day emotions to make them bigger. But if we are working or at least acknowledging that, sometimes we can work with the feeling about what's happening now. And we might even be able to do something that's even just a little bit healing for our past self by trying something different with the feeling that's coming up now. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say that as a kid, you felt unheard. You tried to get people's attention. You told them that you were in pain. You told them that you were having a hard time, and they just kind of didn't really attend to you. Well, what if now, when you have a big feeling about someone not attending to you, you attended to yourself? You attended to the part of you who's upset that someone is not giving you the attention you need in this moment, the help you need. That is healing for this younger part of you. It's not going to heal it all, like all the trauma in one fell swoop like that, but it allows you to give to yourself what you didn't receive and helps your inner system start to trust that, oh, we're grown up. We've got this. Maybe not in the moment, definitely over time. And certainly this is helped along by working with either an IFS coach or an IFS therapist. But you can even do some of this work yourself. But the important thing is when you have emotions is to not push them down or be like, it's fine. I don't even feel anything about that because that's not helping. Those emotions are there one way or another. I was in this program where I had a launch this summer that didn't go well. I spent a crap ton of money, thousands of dollars on ad spend, and I didn't have any conversions. And even though I had a lot of people sign up, not a lot of people showed up. And so I was sad. Like I was super sad because I had been super helpful. And in this program, we shared our launch debrief. And so I shared my debrief. And after I posted, I noticed some grief. And so I just named like, wow, I'm feeling just a little bit of grief I'm feeling some sadness as I share about this that I'm gonna sit with for a little bit and work through. And once I did, it was like maybe 2 hours, 4 at most. But that part of me needed some space to work through what was coming up for me. But then literally the next day, the leader of the program was like, you can't get caught up in your emotions, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it was just poor timing and it had nothing to do with what I had said. But I wasn't caught up in my emotions. And I think a lot of times feeling our feelings for a period of time can get like people can think of that as being caught up in our feelings versus actually just working with them. So, personally, as someone who's been in the field of mental health for 25 years and has been working with people in their feelings and worked with people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s who never felt their feelings and either have chronic illness or all of a sudden are having these emotional outbursts or whatever, I can tell you that feelings are important to deal with. It's not something to just be like, oh, yeah, it's no problem, whatever. It's fine. I don't let that kind of stuff bother me. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we should let every single thing bother us. But if we do notice some feelings about something, then there's something for us to attend to. And that's all it is. It doesn't have to be a big thing because emotions are data too. In the example of my launch debrief, there's a lot of things that go into a debrief. You look at your numbers and see what happens so you can figure out what to keep doing and what to try differently. But one of the pieces of data that I found missing that wasn't taken seriously in that program I was in was emotional data, because that is powerful too. And so it's important that we attend to those emotions. We lean in and get curious. We work with them so then we can move forward rather than staying stuck in them for days, weeks, years, and even decades. If you like this video, I would love it if you'd comment. Let me know what resonated. If you want to argue with me, totally happy to do that. Just no trolls, please. And I would love it if you haven't already, please subscribe. Take care.